Welcome into Burke Lakefront Airport and Big Play Studios. This is the Come Get Some show. I'm your host, Blake Williams, here with Mr. Come Get Some himself, Gregg Williams. And there's no week of the NFL season where the Come Get Some attitude, mantra, everything is more embodied than this week. This is Super Bowl week. You see my Super Bowl, the trophy, the Lombardi Trophy that we won together right here. I don't know if a lot of fans probably don't realize that. It's like there's one main Lombardi Trophy, and then there's a whole bunch of other Lombardi trophies that are 75% the size of that one, still all Tiffany silver and whatnot that they give out to the coaches and players along with their rings. But this is what it's all about. This is what it's about this week, and it's about the chase for that and come get some. But we've got a great show lined up for you. We're going to talk a lot of old school Super Bowl stories between these teams, old school Super Bowl stories of yours and ours, and then get into some in-depth preview and matchups and whatnot of this game before we get into our Pay That Man segment. But G-Dub, we're going to do things a little bit differently this week on our 3 cents. And so we're going to do the 3 keys to victory for each team. And so G-Dub, Kansas City, what do you think the 3 biggest keys to victory is for Kansas City this week?
Well, I like the fact that I get a chance to do the Kansas City team and you do the 49er team. So I was born and raised just outside of Kansas City, so it's good. First off is Spags on defense. The defense is going to have to stop the run. Now, we talk about this all the time, but the Shanahan family of the run game, of the zone scheme run game, and then Kyle's taking it light years past what Mike did because he'll get into the gap schemes and all that kind of stuff too. But Spags has got to stop the run. You got to put him in more passing situations. You got to do that. And how you do that is understand. They will make you understand how hard it is to play force against them. And if you do not shrink the space on the field, they have tremendous cutback lanes all over the place to where they can do that in their zone schemes. And Spags has to be able to do that. And it's been something that has been a little bit of a dark shadow on their defense because their defense has been really strong, but teams have been able to run the ball at times against them. And then number 2, okay, got to make sure, okay, that Patrick, Andy, all the guys, Matt Nagy, okay, got to protect the football. Don't create short fields, scoring opportunities being multiple field goals and stuff. And Patrick's got to take care of the football and make it every drive in with a kick that you love to say. Okay, and that is huge in that response. And then Spags, one more time coming over on the defensive side of the ball is, let's get after Brock Purdy. Let's get after the young guy. You've now not let them run the ball, put them in more passing situations, and then confuse, confound like he's been rock and rolling the coverage and everything, and take the ball away and force the young quarterback to have to make a play.
I mean, spot on right there. I mean, that's clearly how I think you attack San Francisco as well too. I mean, that's keys for Kansas City, but keys to San Francisco. But since I was only born in Kansas City, I guess, but I wasn't like full on raised there. I only lived there until I was 3, and then a couple years coaching in my late 20s. I'll do San Francisco, but yeah, San Francisco first and foremost. First down efficiency. And so we know they're a run team, but first down efficiency, meaning run the ball well on first down, screen the ball well on first down, and be able to take and make some big maybe carded looks and some high efficiency down the field play action shots, all mirrored well and sequenced well in a play caller standpoint like Kyle Shanahan does. They need first down efficiency. And you talked about to combat what you were talking about with Kansas City there, and Spags getting in a more known passing situations and defined behind the chains or defined leveraged passing situations is can Kyle and that offensive staff in San Francisco say play 6 or fewer. 6 or fewer true third downs. True, what we would think of as true leverage third downs in the game. Turn second downs into third downs like when need be, but be highly efficient on first down. And then 2, to combat what you just talked about, takeaways on defense. takeaways on defense. That offense is playing back to its form here in the playoffs in Kansas City, and they need to steal some possessions by taking some possessions away. And then lastly, finish strong. We've heard all the stuff out there forever about San Francisco not being able to come back, from any sort of deficit in the fourth quarter, in halftime deficits and whatnot, and that's who they've turned into in the playoffs.
Yep.
Both playoff games, they've come back from big deficits.
Both of them.
That makes them a way more even dangerous team than they already were, and they're going to have one of those. I expect it to be an epic finish game, fought down to the last second, fought down to the last wire. But hey, stick right with us, because when we get back right here, we are going to go back in time and lore and talk about some great Super Bowl reviews in past times with both of these storied franchises. Welcome back into the Come Get Some show, and this is our Super Bowl week. Everything about this week, right, is Super Bowl week. We know it. It's the biggest week of the year for sports in the world. Frankly. I mean, we could talk about World Cup and stuff like that, but it's leading up to the most watched television spectacle in the world every year for many years. But this segment right here, we've got two storied franchises playing in this game. So we're going to go down a trip down memory lane and talk about some Super Bowl memories of lore from these two teams. And so you already mentioned it, G-Dub, and kind of segued us into this. You grew up in Kansas City. You were born in Kansas City, and so you were sitting there going to those practices out at Old William Jewell College and watching those guys. You sat there and watched Super Bowl I, Super Bowl IV. So let's talk about that first of all. So Super Bowl I, Green Bay Packers versus Kansas City Chiefs, right? And that's 1967, January of 1967, right? So you're about 8.5 years old. Do you remember that, and what do you remember about that game, watching that game? What sticks out to you about that game?
A couple of things, and back in those days, before it became a real big festive thing, it was just a really tight little family out on the farmhouse for me. And, we were there, just my dad and I and my brother and my mom, and we were watching on an old black and white TV. And the biggest problem that came out of the game is that I didn't tell my dad that, and again, we grew up with no money, had no money and that kind of stuff, grew our own food and ate it, and butchered our own, livestock to be able to eat all the time out there on the farm, is that I made a quarter, 25-cent bet in the second grade with somebody at school, and I had picked the Chiefs, and the Packers kicked their tail, and so I had to somehow, some way come up with a quarter from him, and in order for him to get the quarter, he completely lost his cool, and about, no son of mine is going to be betting on all that kind of stuff. So he ended up giving me the quarter, but there was bigger than quarter marks on my butt where he beat my butt about never doing that again, slapped me around a little bit. And
I know my grandpa, so I can only I can only imagine how thrilled.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about a dude that lived through the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl.
Born in it and grew up in it.
Left school in middle school to go work at the GM factory to make ends meet while farming during the off hours in the GM plant. As a teenager during it, trying to come out of the Great Depression, and he probably was not too thrilled about his son not understanding.
Nope, he wasn't. But
wagering a quarter on a football game.
And then 4 years later, they were back in it again.
And
they beat
Super Bowl IV, right?
Yeah, they beat the Joe Namath and the Jets.
So talk about that. 4 years later, the Super Bowl's kind of become a thing now, right? The Chiefs are playing the Vikings. The Jets were playing the year before. The Chiefs are playing the Vikings, and the Chiefs beat the Vikings. And so talk about Super Bowl IV and what that was like with Kansas City winning its first world championship. And I know things are things nowadays, you have a camera everywhere and it's so big and everything. Right. But talk about what that was like in old farm town Kansas City.
And all of a sudden now the game become bigger now. So there was always kinds of things to get-togethers and stuff. And so on my mom's side of the family, went over to my grandma's house, and all the relatives came, and we watched all that together and everything. And we were all big Chiefs fans, and Chiefs were able to win that game. make it a great game, make it a great win. Otis Taylor making some great players in that game. He was one of my all-time favorites too, and got to meet him later on in life. And it was a great win and a great family thing to do that. And my dad, in front of all the people there, turned to me and said, "Did you bet anything this week?" And I said, "Nah, I decided not to have any outside bets this week. I wanted not to have any bruise marks on the side of my head."
Hey, I could only imagine. But like, what was it like? What was it like? Did they have parades? Like, what did they have those things back in the day? Like
massive.
That?
Downtown Kansas City was just absolutely massive. Through the weather. It's cold weather. Bad conditions at time there. But then a lot of little bitty small towns around Kansas City had their own festive type parades
like
and that
Liberty,
kind of stuff.
Excelsior,
Liberty,
Springs,
Excelsior,
like
they had a little kind of a little good little deal there with Excelsior too. So it was good, great things.
You mentioned Otis. But like, who were some of your other as a kid growing up? I mean, it's cool. You've gotten a chance to live a little boy's dream, so to say, and spend a lifetime coaching in the NFL and winning Super Bowls and everything. But as the little kid growing up in Kansas City, looking back, like, who were some of your heroes, legends that you used to go get a chance to watch at little William Jewell College practice and talk about that?
Well, the big thing was, Fred Urbanus, Buck Buchanan, Willie Lanier. Bobby Bell. Bobby Bell worked for my dad also too, because those guys only made like $6,800 a year and had to have off-season jobs.
Yeah.
And Bobby worked at General Motors for my dad and that kind of stuff.
That's a lot of people don't think, they realize it's like playing professional football was their side hustle.
That's their side hustle.
They had to get benefits and actually make a living. They had to work in a plant or be a lawyer or a doctor. Some of them could do that.
Be able to make ends meet with all that kind of stuff. But one of the unbelievable things, Blake, was when going over there and watching them at practice back in the old days, is that when there would be a timeout on the field or a shift from offense to defense or something like that, Hank Stram was the head coach back then in those days. But I'd look over there at the goalposts out on the field, waiting for their turn to go back on the field. One of the backups were going all this stuff, and you'd see Lynn Dawson and other players for the Chiefs, and I'd be over there smoking a cigarette, leaning up next to the goalpost, getting ready for their time to go back out there. Okay, instead of drinking water out of a water jug or some type of stuff to keep regenerate muscles, they're smoking cigarettes and over there getting ready to go back out on the field and play. Unbelievable times.
That's so the old pictures are true.
They're
not
true.
They're not doctored.
No, they're not doctored on the sidelines and all that kind of stuff.
Here's another story. I remember watching it vividly, and so this is something that, like, it's a Joe Montana story that I think you should tell the people. It's when Joe Montana was playing for the Chiefs. I remember because I was sitting there as a ball boy watching this, and I just grew up with this story of lore. But so it's the Chiefs are playing at the Houston Oilers in the divisional round.
Yep.
Buddy Ryan's the defensive coordinator. You're the special teams coordinator and coaching and assisting with the DBs, and you're the hand signaler for the defensive plays.
Yep.
Talk about the story of when you knew, like, hey, just what it was like going against another you had a Hall of Fame quarterback in Warren Moon
every day.
You would go against in practice, but talk about the story of the play that you would set up Joe Montana for all year long, or somebody in the playoffs for. You didn't know who it was going to be, and what happened in that play.
Well, the big thing too, and he had Steve Young going against him and all that kind of stuff at the 49ers at the time, because Joe's at Kansas City. But what Buddy had done, and Buddy was a great game planner too, in that what we have been doing is we've been showing a different kind of a pressure coming off the strong passing strength side, and playing in a single rotation like a cover 3 or a cover 1, but it's just a one-on-one type look out there at the wide receiver. And what we did was we ended up playing a trap coverage, where now all of a sudden he had never seen it before.
Going to roll to a cover 2 and get him to try to throw it into a two-on-one.
Coming down now to run downhill and pick that short throw, trying to beat blitz coverage. And we set it up perfect. We got what we want, and here it is right now. Okay, the
unblocked blitzer, the whole thing.
Unblocked blitzer. Joe Montana has to throw hot in order to keep from getting his lights knocked out right there, because that's how we played the game at that time. The receiver, runs the hitch. Here comes the corner, up there right now, downhill, has picked the ball off. And instead of throwing the ball to him, Joe Montana sees it late, and he throws it into the ground. It skips off the turf, and I have to protect myself so I don't get hit in the nuts, and I have to catch the ball. And he looks up at me. I'm the signal caller doing the stuff, rotating plays, and he goes, and just say, hey, sorry you didn't get that interception like you thought. I wanted to throw it back at him in the middle of the game, punt the ball over there.
He said I was born at night, but not last night.
That's what he said.
I've seen some things, young buck.
He said I was born at night, but not last night. I have seen things before, young guy.
Well, let's see if you remember this one. Here's what I vividly remember. We'll end the review segment with this. The first Super Bowl that I ever sat down and watched from beginning to end, like super focused, everything with you, we're at our next door neighbor's house, the McClartys in Houston, Texas. We've got knocked out of the playoffs.
Right.
At the Houston Oilers, and the 49ers are playing the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of inflation has happened from Super Bowl I to Super Bowl 29 because like I'm 10 years old or whatever, and you and I have bet $40. $40. And that's going to be a stiff penalty for a 10-year-old or whatever. And so I had taken the 49ers in giving you 24.5 points, I believe the spread was.
Yep.
And so I mean, like it was gonna have to be a beatdown, and we needed I think it was either Deion Sanders or a Merton Hanks. I want to say it was Deion Sanders.
It was Deion.
We needed a defensive touchdown late in the game, at the end of the game, to make it like a 31-point victory or whatever, and me win that $40. But I was like sitting there. I remember you were trying to like distract me.
I was doing everything I could.
Get away from me! I'm having to pay attention.
You were
to this
tensed
game.
up like can be.
I was running around waving my 220s in the party afterwards.
Because we were going to break the piggy bank out on the driveway, and you're going to have to pay me out of your piggy bank.
I was going to have to go get a job.
Yeah.
But hey, stick right with us, because when we get back, we're going to talk about Super Bowl 34 stories in your first Super Bowl appearance when you were back as the defense coordinator at the Tennessee Titans. Welcome back into Come Get Some. This is our Super Bowl week. And right now we're going to talk about somebody, I mean, you've been to 2 Super Bowls, narrowly lost one, won another one. I was there with you at both and know all about what it takes to prepare for a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl. But we're going to talk about specifically in this segment, Super Bowl 34. So the first year that the Tennessee Titans changed their name to the Titans, right? That was the season, famously, that Bud Adams, the owner of the Houston Oilers, now the Tennessee Titans, had said playoffs are pink slips for all of you guys, Jeff Fisher and all of you guys. Like, it was time to not be 8-8 anymore. Playoffs are pink slips. And in a hard fought division, that was the old AFC Central division. I mean, you had Jacksonville, you had the Tennessee Titans, you had the Baltimore Ravens, you had the Cincinnati Bengals, and then the Cleveland Browns, coming back and whatnot. And so a big time, and the Pittsburgh Steelers. I left out the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Yeah. So it was the one division that had one more team than everybody else because the Browns obviously had gone and become the Ravens, and then the new Browns had come back, and so there was one more team. But talk a little bit about that season, the magic of that season leading up to the playoffs. What'd you guys have to do?
The big thing is that we had to make sure now that we were all on the same page. It was another energy about it. I love that, Mr. Adams came out and said that. I thought it was fantastic anyway, because that's how we treated every practice, every play, especially from the defensive side of the ball and what we did and all that stuff. But what we did was at that point in time, Jeff was involved with the defense a little bit, but no more, because this right now, Jeff was going to be a total head coach, offense, defense, special teams. He got away from what we're doing on defense, and I tease him all the time about now, we're going to be a hell of a lot better because it's just going to be me on the defense, because we've all got our pink slips ready to roll, and took over completely play calling. And I energized, defensively calling the plays was understanding playing the quarterback position and being an offensive coordinator, how to make sure you put stress on the other play caller.
So you guys go from 8-8 to 13-3 and still are a damn wild card team.
It's still a
right?
wild
Still a
card,
wild
13
card
and
team
3.
because the Jacksonville Jaguars win the division at 14 and 2, and their only 2 losses on
Were
the
against
season
us.
were against you guys. And so let's take it to, so now you're playing a wild card, but you're a home wild card
Right.
against the Buffalo Bills.
Yep.
And the Music City Miracle
Yep.
game. I know we talked briefly back when we had the Frank Wycheck Memorial segment. When Frank Wycheck passed away earlier this year, we talked a little bit about the Music City Miracle. But talk a little bit about the Music City Miracle, all the practice, the lead up to it, and then the moment of truth.
We practiced that play for 17 straight weeks, and it was the last play of every Saturday's practice that we had to go through that. And I would never, and Alan Lowry, a really good special teams coach, had to go against us on defense knowing that the play was going to be called, and we did that for 17 straight weeks, and I'd be gosh darn if it didn't come up. That's what caused us to win the game. We forced them to kick a field goal to go ahead 16-10.
Right.
But now we got to score a touchdown to good, so they're kicking off after a field goal ahead 16-10.
So was that the first year that you guys had installed and ran that play?
That
So
was
you
the
guys-
very
so
first year.
Where did the genesis of it come from?
It came from Alan, and Alan had seen that, at the college level, a different part of it. But what we wanted to do was we wanted to put our own side on that thing. And Jeff Fisher's an outstanding coach in special teams, and Alan and
Frank
Jeff
had a quarterbacking background.
and right, Frank had
right.
an old
Wycheck
quarterback.
who
Yeah,
threw it. Yep. That's amazing. I mean, how about that? Like that you come up with that, you install that, and then it comes up
Yep.
in that situation of all places.
Yep.
And then next week you got to go play the start of the Indianapolis dynasty, right?
very start of it.
with Peyton Manning. So you got to go beat Peyton Manning the next week. Talk about that.
Well, the big thing is again him is make him get off his spot in the box. Make him no longer. We're going to make him be a running, scrambling quarterback, and that's what we did. We knocked him out of the pocket. We did pressure quite a bit. People talk about me, Dr. Heat, coming at that, but we pressured him quite a bit, forced that situation, and also were able to score on defense again.
Yeah, the thing that I remember most vividly from that game was Eddie George, who wasn't known as a burner, breaking away and looking the old RCA dome and looking up at the Teletron live that he's running into, and he could see, and he was watching the guy that was getting ready to hawk him down from behind
and try to strip him.
Well, no, he dove at his legs,
right,
and he timed up his high step and kicked his feet up high step away right at that jump because he's watching
it on the Teletron
live on the Jumbotron and doesn't get it's like the most perfectly timed high step ever. And he talked about
big time.
If you remember, he's running with his head up like this,
big
looking
time.
at it. So jumping forward to the Super Bowl, all right, and the NFL crazily had that was the one time in the modern era they experimented with not having a bye week. So you guys had to go straight from flying back from Jacksonville and winning the AFC Championship game,
third win,
to then playing in Atlanta in an epic century kind of ice storm. Where the whole city froze over
down,
like an inch of ice over everything. But that was also because you guys are playing the greatest show on turf, and that was the stock boy to MVP of the league. Year for Kurt Warner that he put himself on the map. Talk about what it was like to prepare for the greatest show on turf, and kind of the novelty of some of the stuff that they presented. And you guys had already had to beat them earlier.
We already
in the year.
beat them earlier in the season.
You'd already punked them because of defensive physicality at Tennessee. But talk about preparing for Mike Martz and that offense and what it was like.
Mike's a very brilliant offensive coach and everything. And when we played them earlier in the year, I had to go back and study that film really hard. But how could we picture up things that he believed were going to do the same thing again, because we got after him so hard doing those things. So we pictured those kind of things to get some things right there, but you had to be able to run with these guys. Their speed on offense was fantastic, and Mike does something to this day, and you and I talk about this every time we see it on TV, on how he would speed motion, running the guy across in motion every single time they put the slot in motion, and you're playing catch-up just to maintain the speed, whether it be zone or man, on all those things. We eliminated most of their big plays. They had one big play against us, and we made them kick field goals and keep a tight game. But we had to run the clock too, and gave up a lot of yards, but we made them kick field goals.
And it came down to the end, man, and Kevin Dyson, and I'll never forget, and I'll end it on this, is from our vantage point, it was just crazy. From our vantage point, it looked like Kevin Dyson was in.
Yep.
And so you had this moment where we all celebrate on our sideline, and then you see them all celebrating on their sideline and kind of rushing the field. And there was kind of this pause, like, well, what's going on? And then you kind of like look out and you see the refs saying, game over, the whole thing. And it was an incredible, hard-fought game, and that's how it happens sometimes.
And that was before replay.
Yeah, before replay.
And so
no
you're
doubt.
talking about a lot of pissed off
but
people.
He was down, clearly short,
Yep.
and ran the route a little bit short. But hey, that's how it goes sometimes. But hey, stick right with this, because when we get back, we're going to talk Super Bowl 44 a decade later, where he got smart enough to actually finally hire me and bring me on, and I showed him how to actually win one of these. So stick right with us. Welcome back into Come Get Some, and this is our Super Bowl show. And I laugh and I joke and I just teed it up to G-Dub that now we fast forward a decade later, and maybe if again, like I joked with you at the time, maybe if you and Mom would have had me a little bit sooner, I'm the oldest child, I could have helped you win one of these a little bit sooner.
We're out on the sidewalk fighting over that comment after the game.
After the game, no doubt. I was coaching offensive line for Sean Payton. You were the defensive coordinator, and it was an epic game. First father and son to win a Super Bowl together,
very first
on the staff before we made it cool before the Belichick started
family.
doing it. I guess I'm a little bit older, but let's talk about that season a little bit, right? And so, kind of the same type of situation where even with Drew Brees and him having just like breaking all these records,
back-to-back 8-8.
They were 7-9, 8-8, like the previous
7-9,
years,
yep.
having to roll over the defense, so to say, because that was kind of what was holding them back. But they weren't even, sniffing a winning record or going to the playoffs in a kind of poor division, honestly, and whatnot. But then all of a sudden, out of the blue, out of nowhere, to a lot of people out there, 13-0. 13-0 to start the season, and then finish 0-3. So I'm sitting there thinking, 13-0, this can't be happening.
Right.
Then all of a sudden we finish 0-3. Oh my God.
Yep.
This can't be happening. Now we rest everybody final game because we already had the number 1 seed locked up and all stuff like that. So, but now we have a bye. So now we're talking playoffs, right? So we roll into the playoffs. We win. We do nothing but win through preseason in the first 13 games of the regular season. Now we haven't won a game in over a month.
Right.
And the opening play of the game, we're playing. Funny enough, we talked Kurt Warner before. We're playing Kurt Warner
at
again.
The Cardinals.
You're playing Kurt Warner again. He's at the Cardinals. And opening play of the game, they got the ball on offense. They run this little trick wind back bend play against your defense and go 80 yards to the house. Out the gate, handoff run, 80 yards to the house. And talk about that and like handling adversity and what you had preached all year long, what we had preached all year long about handling adversity.
Well, we have a sudden change, adversity type philosophy of how we go about doing that. And got to get people refocused on the sideline, and immediately went straight to, let's go. Okay, refocused and everything on the sideline. Now it's over. That's it. There won't be another play. And our guys did a great job focusing and turning it into a really dominant, very physical football game. And none of that kind of stuff's going to happen again. And to the credit, defensively, we were a dominant defense. Okay. Most of the time there, and led the team in takeaways, and so we started knocking the ball around and taking the ball away and scoring on defense,
knocking Kurt Warner around on the when he tried to chase the interception return.
Yep.
One more rule that you got changed.
Yeah, one more. Can't do that anymore.
Players / quarterbacks learn to stop chasing the play.
Yep.
But lo and behold, we look up and it's going into the fourth quarter, it's something like 49-14 or something like
42
that,
to
49-7 or something.
Yep.
And a runaway, and then had to beat. That was hard. For the defense that year. I mean, you guys had to beat 3 sure first ballot Hall of
Fame
Kurt
quarterbacks.
Warner, then had to beat Brett Favre at the Vikings, then had to go and play a checkmaster game versus the Indianapolis Colts. And I want you to talk about that game a little bit. And so talk about the game plan for Peyton in that game and what you guys built on defense from the check system. And like, if you can talk a little bit of particulars, and then kind of like how you did it and how Jonathan Vilma, the defensive signal caller, did it, and maybe some of the things that you guys were checking to and checking off of.
Well, back then, before it became all the different things on defense, and in those games, we still used all kinds of verbal communications, hand signals, and all that stuff. And we had, done a great job of scouting and understanding, the signals that Peyton Manning used, the words he used too. But what we did is that to mess with him, okay, we had wristbands on every single guy on defense. Wore a wristband, whether you're on the sideline getting ready to play special teams, if you're on defense out there. And we changed our signals and our code words quarter by quarter to make sure that we were setting things up for Peyton didn't know what we were in.
And you changed your defensive identity.
We changed our defense.
You were a 4-3 team, and you surprised them. You came out the opening quarter doing what?
3-4 defense.
So you started in 3-4 defense.
Yep.
That's how our boy Jolon Dunbar got a NFL or a Super Bowl start, because he had to get 4 linebackers on the field that you could trust.
Out there, and we're doing
4-3 the next quarter.
Yep.
And then went 3-3-5
in
the third quarter, and then went a mix of 4-2-5, 3-3-5, whatever it needed to be.
Everything in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, everything in the fourth quarter.
Here comes the Buddy Ryan, Bear principles, and all that stuff. And then that, obviously, in that game, we called the timeout, okay, with 3 minutes and 31 seconds to go. Well, we didn't do that. We had a flop. Anthony Hargrove did a flop out there, and we had an injury time, pulled a hamstring, all that kind of stuff. That rule got changed, too, because of it. But I knew exactly what play it was, told everybody that I was going to cut him. If any DB backed up, was going to force him to throw a hot to this situation right there. Had it totally set up. Tracy Porter picks it off, goes 78 yards for a touchdown. Peyton comes running over towards our sideline, and he does a flop, okay, acting like he got clipped. And I am calm walking, and I walk out on the field, and I say something to him, and I keep on walking. He turns his head around. The press want me to know what I said, and I said, "Checkmate, MFer." And to this day, Peyton ever goes, "Really? You had to say that during the game?" And I said, "Yes," and I loved every second of it.
It was an epic game, epic situation. I was up in the box coaching offense, so I got a chance to see how fast we could rush and get down after that, because we knew it was over. But hey, stick right with us, because when we get back, we're going to talk about this actual Super Bowl this week and get in depth into talking about the keys and the key matchups in this game. Welcome back into the Come Get Some show. This is our Super Bowl extravaganza show, and now we're to the main event. We're talking about in-depth the actual Super Bowl game that we're playing this week, and it's a great matchup. It's a great matchup. I mean, these two teams, you don't know which way this game's going to go. Yep. I mean, really, if you look at it, some years you do, or you feel like you do. And speaking of matchups, and this league is such a matchup league. What is maybe the number one matchup or a key matchup that you are excited about watching in this game, G-Dub, and you think that is going to be a big-time deciding factor in how this game goes?
Well, I'm going to go from the coaching point of view, and I'm going to go talk about, Steve Spagnuolo against Kyle Shanahan. It's going to be a great right there. I believe Andy Reid's one of the best of all time, and Matt Nagy, all that stuff going great. But I do want to see exactly what different kinds of disguises and things that Spags has up his sleeve, and can he set the force fast enough, and what Kyle's going to do. And listen to me, Kyle's first 15 and his of the first half and his first 15 of the third quarter, you're going to see a pace and a tempo that he's got things programmed to try to cause Spags to show him what he's doing. Let's see if that's going to be effective or not.
So that's It's totally true. It's totally true. It's going to be a big time part of the game. You know, I go to this. The two ones that I'm actually interested in looking at. So one, the linebacking core for the San Francisco 49ers going against Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce specifically. That offense in general, but Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, we know like that's going to be so much of the go-to, cover like what they're going to do. And those two, Wagner and Greenlaw, like they are big time, physical, athletic. Kind of remind me a little bit like a more athletic version of back in the day when we were in the division. Up there with Navarro Bowman, you know, kind of being like the Wagner kind of style, you know, and them up there with those great linebackers there. But I want to watch that, you know, how they're able to roam and cover ground and play sideline to sideline in the pass game and the run game. And then two, I think one that'll be interesting to see is like the quarterback's best friend is the Kittle versus Travis Kelce matchup.
You bet.
Not them going head to head, but them who's able to put up more production. And we know Kittle brings a little bit of a different monster to it because of what he does in the run game.
What he does there.
That maybe Kelce doesn't.
There'll be some sneak routes, some dead routes on where he's trying to hide some things too. And Kansas City's defense can't take their eyes off of him in man coverage situations.
No doubt. You know, speaking of kind of eyes and in distractions and whatnot, like flipping gears, we got to talk about this a little bit. Like there's so much around Super Bowl week, right? The pageantry of it, going out to Vegas of all places, right? In Tuesday, the media circus of that Tuesday is really like a whole wasted day, you know, of all that media circus and all day. And everybody's got 50 family members and everything out there, like pulling at you, wanting to have some of your time. And I think NFL players and NFL coaches, one of their biggest superpowers is the ability to compartmentalize like none other. But we've seen the news that's happened out there with Pat Mahomes Sr., right, getting his third DUI, facing some potentially like legitimate, you know, big time jail time. We know some of those other things, but like, so when it comes to family, we know a couple years ago we saw what happened leading up to the Super Bowl, the kind of the same week with Andy Reid's son having the incident, you know, with the crash and whatnot. And so kind of talk about the levels of distractions, but then even like when you have something like that with family, how hard it is to potentially compartmentalize and have to go out and do your job and block out all the noise Super Bowl week.
You know, and that's a great analogy to talk about blocking out all those distractions and everything. The fact that they've both been there before, you know, San Francisco 4 years ago and Andy back to back to back. That experience helps those guys on the Chiefs side a little bit. But in all honesty, I'm going to tell you something right now. Those things are very stressful, the distractions, especially be it family. But when you are a professional, as a coach and a player, and you get inside the white lines, and that 3 hours inside the white lines becomes a sanctuary, becomes a place of peace, becomes a place where no longer is that stress pounding at you on all different other sides, you know, the visitors and all that stuff, family stresses and stuff, because now you have to concentrate and do your job, or otherwise, okay, you're a part of why you didn't win instead of what you should do to win.
Here's one, G-Dub. We talked a little bit about inflation in this in this episode, right? Like we talked about your bets going from a quarter to your bets with me going to $40. But talk about have you seen the inflation of these ticket prices out there right now?
It's amazing.
$12,000 for just a normal ticket.
A normal ticket.
Average suite going for $2 million. You saw Christian McCaffrey's mom, right? You know, like they got money.
No doubt.
You know, and Christian's got money. His fiance's got money. His dad and his mom have money, but they're saying, no, there's no way in hell we're paying $2 million for our own little pocket of seats at one game. I mean, can you believe
$2 million is the average?
I mean, I got to think. I got to think the ticket prices, like, for this game, if all of it's now, I don't know how much of that secondary market inflating it, but you got to talk about that's got to be $500 million. That's got to be over $500 million.
And every one
of
of the NFL owners, every one of the NFL owners is smiling about their 1/132nd of the money coming to them.
No doubt. No doubt. So, hey, predictions time, G-Dub. Play Nostradamus. Who do you got in this game? Who do you think is going to win? What do you think the score is?
And I can't pick against Andy Reid and the Kansas City Chiefs hometown things, but I think it's 28-24 Chiefs.
28-24 Chiefs. I'm going to go with 28-24 49ers. And I think the 49ers have to come back from 14 down. I got to think they have to score 14 unanswered. It may be like 24 to 10 or 24 to 14. And
well, we're going to be in an argument at the end of the game in this one here because we're going against
How would that be anything new? No. How would that be anything new?
It'll be voiceful.
But hey, stick right with us because when we get back, we're going to finish up with our Pay That Man segment. Welcome back into Come Get Some, and this is our Pay That Man, his money segment. And we got to talk about Brock Purdy.
Mm-hmm.
We got to talk about Brock Purdy. So first of all, G-Dub, tell me, Brock Purdy is clearly, I think, the poster child for Pay That Man in the NFL right now, playing a premier position, Mr. Irrelevant, getting paid so little. But talk a little bit about the narrative of the system quarterback and what you see from Brock Purdy right now.
What I have seen from Brock Purdy is Brock Purdy has made the system right. Brock Purdy has made Kyle Shanahan right on many of his calls. I don't see him just being a system quarterback, especially when you see him come from behind.
And to that as well too, GW, it's like Brock Purdy's not scheduling the making the schedule and whatnot. All he can do is come out there, run the plays that Kyle Shanahan calls, and beat the team that's in front of him. And all he's done for 2 years since being Mr. Irrelevant is do exactly that.
Is do that and win games.
You see the way his teammates rally behind him and everything. But let me clarify the concept of Pay That Man for fans that don't understand out there. I'm not saying pay Brock Purdy anything or pay him more than every other quarterback out there in the league. I'm saying pay him his just due. Let's put this in perspective right here. I don't know if you guys know this or not, fans out there, but there's a guy by the name Patrick Mahomes that he's playing against this week. And he plays quarterback as well too. And he throws the ball a couple times a year. Like they pass the ball on Kansas City's offense. Patrick Mahomes made almost $4,000 more per pass attempt this season than Brock Purdy made per game. So I'm talking about every time Patrick Mahomes spiked the ball, threw the ball away, incompletion, intercepted, all these drop passes that Kansas City has had up there this year, Patrick Mahomes has made over $53,000 per pass attempt this year. Brock Purdy's made $49,000 per game this year.
That he played the whole game.
All you can do is win. It's not about a regular season awards. It's about postseason glory, and he's got a chance to etch his name into the record books and potentially propel himself into the final season, the third season of which he can
original contract,
which he can actually get paid after.
Right.
And this will be a big step towards making a big generational impact for he and his family. But hey, I'm gonna give an assist. Pay that man as we roll out here to a man of mine, right? This guy, Joe Graves, 30-year-old assistant offensive line coach for the 49ers out there. This guy played for me in college at Southeastern Louisiana University, captain, 4-time academic All-American, didn't come from really much of anything in his life, worked for my wife at Marriott. My wife was a director of sales at Marriott down there in New Orleans, so worked his off-campus job with her to make a little money, used to come over to our house all the time for Thanksgiving down there.
I remember him,
and I am so proud of him and the profession, the career he's made for himself, and hoping he can get his first Super Bowl championship and maybe go on to be a head offensive line coach himself. But G-Dub, send us out the way you do, Super Bowl style.
This is the word for playing in a Super Bowl. Here we go. Ready, break? Come get some.